I was watching a podcast earlier today, and there was a commentary coming against the pre-tribulation rapture that had me a little frustrated because, do we just throw Luke chapter 17 away in the trash that says, likewise, as it was also in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even so, it will be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. Not when the Son of Man comes, but when he's revealed. That's a difference. So long story short, I go to Genesis to begin to study. Let me go back and let me see what was it like in the days of Lot. And I am blown. First off, I'm going to take a sidestep because I had went back to Abraham when those three angels came to visit Abraham to tell him that he was about to receive the promise of a son. And then I saw how Lot saw the two angels coming up to the gate after they had left Abraham. And I noticed there was a pattern in the way that these men received these angels and how they knew instantly that they had to have been angels and sent from the Lord. And they had this pattern. And then I also started realizing that after they received them and they had that visitation, it was either there was a promise that was released or there was a transition. And I started thinking that every time there is a visitation in the Bible, there is either a promise that is released, like Mary, the angel that visited her and told her about the son that she was going to have, Jesus, like Elizabeth, who her priestly husband was visited by an angel during his priestly duties that let him know they were going to give birth to John. There was always a visitation before a transition or a visitation before a promise. And I thought it odd because this year my church is celebrating, the word of the year for my church was, this is the year of visitations and encounters. But I'm going to go study that on a different day, and I'll come back and I'll let y'all know. But let's get back to the story of Lot. So again, this pre-tribulation rapture debate had me a little frustrated. So I called out to the Lord. I was like, please explain to me, do we just throw Luke 17 in the trash? Which, no, I am convinced from all of the things that the Lord has shown me throughout the years from my personal encounters with him, it is a pre-tribulation rapture. But we're going to look at the days of Lot because I saw something in this account that I have not ever seen before. So Genesis chapter 19, it says, the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. That's another thing. Abraham, when those three men came to him, Lot, when those two men came to him, they were sitting at the gate or they were sitting at the door. So essentially, they were standing watch. When Lot saw them, he stood up, he met them, he greeted them, he showed homage, he put his face toward the ground. He said, here, please come into my house, spend the night, wash your feet, that you may rise early and go on your way. And so for those who do not know about why the men even came, they came to see if Sodom was as wicked as it was getting to the Lord that it was. And you can find that in Genesis chapter 18. And it says in Genesis chapter 18, verse 20, it says, and the Lord said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grave, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it, and that has come to me. And if not, I will know. God is such a just God because before he just casts judgment, he does his investigation. He did it with Noah as well. It makes you wonder. Be careful how you entertain strangers, for some of us have entertained angels unaware. So we have this divine visitation going on. Lot was standing watch because he was expecting it, because he's standing at the gate and he's interceding for Sodom. And you're going to see how I know that. So that's why the two men were there. And so they were like, no, we're going to spend the night in the city square. They wanted to see, is it really this evil? And Lot insisted strongly, no. And so they turned into him and they went into his house. And so he made them a feast. He baked unleavened bread and they ate. And unleavened bread is a sign of free from sin. And the Bible says in chapter 19, verse 4, now before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house. And they called to Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out so that we may know them carnally. They were so perverted. They weren't hiding what they were doing. They were not ashamed of their actions or their requests. They were ganging up. And then this is what stood out to me. It says, and then Lot went out to them through the doorway. He shut the door behind him and he said, please, my brethren, do not do so wickedly. My brethren. Now we know brethren means brother. In Hebrew it means brother, and it could mean members of the same spiritual community. It could mean people of the same nationality or the same society. But my brethren, it's an interesting choice of words. He said, stop doing such wickedness. That's the reason these men are here, because of your wickedness. And you know what they said to him? They said, get out of our way. You came here to stay, and you only came here to judge us. And because you want to keep judging us, we're going to do to you worse than what we're going to do to them once we get our hands on them. So the Bible says they pressed him so hard, almost like that Travis Scott concert, rushing him to try to break down the door. They were going to trample Lot. That's why the Bible says, do not cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample it underfoot. This part, verse 10, but the men reached out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And then they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they became weary trying to find the door. What a revelation. Lot had been on the watch. He was looking for a move of God, because Lot, it tells you here that even the people knew that he was living among them and that he was constantly calling out their wickedness, and they were taking it as judging, but Lot was trying to save them, so much so that he even offered up his 2 virgin daughters to get them to stand down and to not try to attack the men of God. But they said, no, you're just here to judge us. He was an intercessor over that land. He told them, this is the reason, the way you guys are behaving, this is the reason why these people are here. They're coming to see if you are really that wicked. Take my daughters and go. Because he'd rather see something. He clearly had a revelation that, like, kill the body, but you can't do nothing with the soul. Like, he clearly had a revelation that I'd rather not all of you burn in hell. So I'm just going to let you do this so that you don't burn in hell, because these men are here to judge. You think I'm judging you? Wait till this judgment happens. And they said, get out of our way, and almost trampled him under their feet. But the angel's response was that those people became so blind that they couldn't find the door. Who is the door? Lot's brethren became blind that they could not find the door. As in the days of Lot, brethren accusing the righteous of judging them and trying to trample the righteous underfoot so they can continue on in their wickedness, not understanding that God is watching, and there's a period of time in which that intercession is not going to make a difference, because they will become so blind that even though they grope for the door, they will not be able to find it. And the very next thing that happened was Lot's escape.